It's time now for State Your Case with George Corda on News Talk 98.7 WOKI. State Your Case is brought to you by Christian Healthcare Ministries. Now, here's your host, George Corda.
Welcome back, folks. Welcome back. This is not George Corda. This is Jamie Satterfield. I am filling in for George Corda. If that name sounds familiar, Jamie Satterfield's because I work for the News Sentinel, and I've been there for a long, long time. This is State Your Case on News Talk 98.7. We have been talking about this first hour, what happened to the cleanup workers out at the TVA Kingston Coal Ash Spill in 2008. We have more than 30 are dead. I have at least 300 that have come forward with illnesses, chronic or fatal. And I've been investigating this for about a year and a half, and there is no doubt that these folks were poisoned by coal ash, and there is no doubt that they are in need of testing and treatment, and there is no doubt that TVA is continuing to do business with Jacobs Engineering, which denied these people protective gear and lied to them. Those are facts. That's what we've been talking about. Now, I have in studio with me some of my favorite people in the whole world, and Ansol and Janie Clark have just been so good to me. And Ansol was a worker at this spill, and he's got all kinds of health issues, and their lives have just been forever altered. They had plans to, spend some time in retirement and love and fun, and instead, Ansel is sick most of the time, and Janie takes care of him. But we had a memorial service back in December at the site of the spill for the workers, and Ansel did something really special, and I'm going to have Janie tell us about it. Janie, what did Ansel do for that?
Well, TVA made known they did not intend to acknowledge anyone that worked there, and my husband, in honor of all his friends, people we love like family, made a cross by himself. He wanted to do it, and we do thank Roane County for allowing us the space and the opportunity to have it. He made this, and he wouldn't let anybody help him carry it up, and it's a big cross. It's bigger than what I think they were expecting.
Yeah, it was a good.
But we wanted people to see it.
Oh yeah, it's visible.
People like it, and so he did that, and we love all the workers. We think about this every day, all the time. I wanted to, please, may I say something to John that called?
Oh, absolutely.
John, you were worried about TVA and their reputation, that they would be associated with this. But John, I want to ask you a question. TVA caused this. It wasn't Jacobs. Jacobs is just the contractor that TVA hired, which, by the way, has a very sleazy reputation as far as safety goes. I hate it that TVA's reputation might be damaged a little bit.
I do too. TVA could step up and do the right thing.
Yeah.
And then they wouldn't have to worry about the reputation.
But TVA acts like a good old boys club, and I think this is just more politics and action. And I think that's why there's such a lack of trust in our institutions.
Well, one thing that I said in the first hour is that one of the things that TVA does is they provide a lot of jobs for our community. Lots of money. TVA spends lots of money doing what they do, and they hire a lot of contractors and a lot of employees, and they're a big darn deal here in East Tennessee. And I found out how big a darn deal they were when I started calling up our elected officials after this jury ruled that these workers had mounted a case against Jacobs and essentially TVA. I called Lamar Alexander, I called Chuck Flashman, I called Bob Corker, I called Lord Lamesmore, Phil Rowe. Just go down the list. Jimmy Duncan. I called them all. One man gave me something other than Well, that's just a problem for the courts. I don't want to say anything about TVA. And he is now my guest here, Tim Burchett, who is our newest congressman. He takes a seat that has long been held by the Duncan dynasty. So, Tim, I'm honored to have you here. And, these folks came by here today because they wanted to thank you for standing up for them. So, Janie, I'm going to let you do that real quick, and then I'm just going to let Tim have the mic.
Well, when Jamie asked all the elected officials, their answers were very vague, and one in particularly offended me when he called the work, the sacrifice that these people have done, efforts. He appreciated their efforts. So, Mr. Burchett, you were the only one who stood up for us. And we've come to thank you in behalf of all our friends, all the workers, all the sick people, people who've lost people. And we just want to thank you and thank you for meeting us in person.
Yes, ma'am. Well, you pay my salary, so I can't speak for any of my colleagues.
You deserve a raise.
No, I don't. No, ma'am. No. I come from a family of public educators, ma'am. It's somebody asked me what it's like in Washington, and I said, well, if you can get used to a 2-hour work day and there's no heavy lifting and it's all indoors, so I'm blessed beyond belief, ma'am. I really am. And now, anytime a politician says they're not paid enough, you need to find another politician. All right? Because they knew what they were getting when they volunteered to run. Nobody held a gun to their head. And I'm so terribly sorry about what happened to y'all. I can remember when the ash spill occurred. I remembered I'd called into this station, actually, Halloran Hill, and it was, I don't know how many years ago, because I was a state senator. And I remember I was sitting, and I was renting a room from my buddy in Nashville, and I went to see him yesterday after Bill Lee's inauguration. I brought my girls with me, and I remembered I was sitting, it was in the morning, and it was because Hal was on the call-in show, and caller after caller just said they couldn't believe it. And then I got a call from a man who identified himself as a TVA engineer, and just basically he just belittled me, and like he said, what right do you have to question us? We're engineers. And I said, well, dadgummit, if you'd have been doing your job, there wouldn't have been an ash spill. First of all. Second of all, to say that these folks have not they were denied. I mean, I've read some of the reports. They were denied proper health, the masks and everything, and we're told, not to wear the mask, how bad it looked. Well, that's just wrong. And then TVA takes out a full-page ad. I didn't see it because I don't. Sorry, Jamie, I don't take any papers, but for obvious reasons. But what I was told was they took a full-page ad out praising this group. That's my dadgum money. I'm so sick of people like TVA who are a public utility, which means we own it, taking my money and giving it to anybody. How about reducing our electric rates? You pay, and I like the guy who's ahead of it. He gets over $8 million a year. Mm-hmm. I mean, that just blows my mind. And they have private meetings. They shouldn't. And if they want to be a private entity, well, dadgummit, let's go private. Let's talk about going private. But if you're a public entity, you're a quasi-governmental agency, then dadgummit, you better start acting like it. So I've got a lot of, and I've told them this when I met with one of the representatives, and I believe I'm meeting with the head man of TVA this week sometime, maybe in D.C. or here, I'm not sure. But there's a lot of questions I have, and it's unfortunate that folks like yourself and your dear husband here is suffered because of it. And hopefully we can get to the bottom of some of it. But, waiting out a 10-year court case when frankly, as you and I know, a lot of those folks will be gone. Oh, yeah. And there won't be, my daddy used to tell me, he said, dead men tell no tales. And when these folks are gone, and people are, the ash spill is just a distant memory. It's kind of like 9/11. Mm-hmm. It's just a distant memory to folks. But I remember it. I remember it just like it was yesterday. I remember thinking the horror that the poor people felt that were below that ash spill, and just denial and pushing it down the line. And that's part of the problem when you are a public utility. or a public anything, there really is not a lot of accountability. And that's unfortunate. Sorry, I went to ranting and raving, but
no, that's
I drank about 12
why we love you. That's why we love you.
I drank about 12 glasses of tea at lunch today.
Are you still doing the Mountain Dew, Tim?
I'm off the Dew.
I knew Kelly would get you off that.
Yeah, I work out every morning, and I work out with this group, and the average age is in the lower 30s, and I'm 54. And I told somebody I just lay on the mat after it's over with like a big slug. They have to help me get off the mat.
All right, folks. Well, this is News Talk 98.7. I'm Jamie Satterfield, filling in for George Corda. I have as my guest today Congressman Tim Burchett, and we will be back after this break. And if you want to talk to Tim, it's 656-TALK, 1-800-951-TALK, and we'll be right back. All right, folks. She is just nailing the music today.
Good Eagles. Standing on a corner in Winslow, Arizona. My brother called me one time from Winslow, Arizona.
Did he tell you that?
He said, I'm standing on a corner in Winslow, Arizona. I've done it before.
Well, this is News Talk 98.7. This is George Corda's State Your Case, and I am Jamie Satterfield with the Knoxville News Sentinel, filling in for him. And as my guest today, one of my favorite people in the world, Tim Burchett, our congressman for the 2nd District, newly elected, just getting started. I want to take one of these calls, though. These folks have been holding on for a bit. We've been talking about the plight of the workers at the coal ash spill, and also current workers today in the dangerous environment they're in. Let's see, Brenda shaking. Oh, there, I got her. Okay, Brenda, are you with us?
I am.
Hey, tell us your story.
Hi, Jamie. And first of all, I want to say thank you so much for all you've done for these workers. This story would not have gotten out had it not been for you. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. And I'd just like to say that my husband was a truck driver, teamster, who went to work just immediately after the spill happened. And if somebody asked me to chronologically tell all the things that have happened to him since he worked there, I couldn't do it. There was so many things that just happened, one on top of the other, and but the biggest thing is that he had rectal cancer. That sounds indelicate, I know, but he had 2 minor and 3 major surgeries because of that cancer, which was so rare that the doctor had to convene a board of oncologists to know how to treat it. He didn't know where it came from. I know where it came from. It came from that ash spill, because they even had to eat in it for a long time before they even got a place to be where there wasn't any ash. And he would come home from work covered in it, his nose, his ears, and I'd have to wash his clothes, but clean the washer and the dryer after I got through washing his clothes because they were so nasty from that coal ash. And I just want to say that the result of that cancer was devastating. And to take care of someone who is that sick and in that much pain, when he would have one of those surgeries, he'd have to lie on his stomach for 2 weeks because he couldn't sit, couldn't stand, couldn't walk, couldn't anything. It's unbelievable how much suffering. And he also has the heart trouble, the high blood pressure, just innumerable things that have happened to him since this ash spill.
Well, Brenda, I appreciate you calling and telling your story, and I know that walk you're walking. I know what that's like to take care of a sick husband, and you're literally kind of watching him die in front of you, unfortunately.
Right.
And you folks didn't do anything to deserve that. So thank you so much, and thank you for your service to your husband and for his service to our community. And I will continue to tell your story. That's all I can do. It's the only power I've got. It's what God has given me, that ability, and I will use it to try to help you folks. So thank you, Brenda, for calling in. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, and God bless you for your efforts.
Thank you. Tim, so is Washington what you expected?
Yeah, it is, actually. I spent 16 years in the legislature, and with similar characters, I'll say, and egos, and that prepared me strangely for it. It's almost predictable. I know that sounds crazy, but I guess I used to think it was a younger man's game, but I guess God gave me a little more insight since being in the legislature for 16 years and county mayor for 8, dealing with folks, because an old guy, he was an old Democrat, and his name was Shelby Reinhardt, and he was old school. A lot of people didn't like him, but he liked me, and I'll tell you if you got a second. I don't.
Sure, no, you go.
But he was, and I always heard it was about relationships down there. And he told me one time, he said, "Tim, you don't vote bills, you vote people. You look at the kind of person it is, and frankly, if they're a dirt bag, you better watch it.
Yeah.
But if they're a decent person, you look at the content of the bill, and generally it's got that there." And Shelby, I was in the state house for 4 years, and nobody liked Shelby Reinhardt. I mean, nobody liked him, and he would smoke on the floor of the house, and he was just one of these characters, but he always liked me, and I found out why. When I first ran, Dad said that we got the Tennessee Blue Book, it's called, and it's this blue book, and it has everybody's little biography and stuff, and it just mentioned his service in the Army and in the Second World War, and he was part of this thing called I think it was the Red Dog Division, I can't remember, but they were on a little island called Peleliu in the Pacific during the Second World War, and they got into it was supposed to be a mopping up, military intelligence, which is according to my dad, was a misnomer. But it was supposed to be a little mop-up, and they were on this island 30 days. It was one of the bloodiest battles of the whole Pacific, is the island of Peleliu. Look it up. And the Army Division got really shot up bad, and they sent Dad's 1st Marine Division in, and they took the brunt of it, apparently. I don't know all the history. But anyway, Dad said, "You go find this Shelby Reinhardt." And I said, "Daddy, nobody likes this guy. Nobody likes this guy. I don't care." He said, "Tell him your daddy was on 1st Marine Division on Peleliu." And I did. Mm-hmm. And from there on, we would go eat dinner and with these old guys, and I'd be the designated driver, obviously, but we didn't have to take a cab when I was driving. When I was along, and we'd eat at all the nice places, and then we go to Longhorn Steakhouse. I remember one time they came up and said, "It's a no smoking zone, sir," and he said, "Not anymore." And I thought, oh my gosh. I mean, but anyway, so the last.
You were young then, right?
Gosh,
People don't realize you started in this
that was
politicking young.
That was 25 years ago.
Yeah.
And I had a bill up. It was my last bill up in the Senate, and it was one of my red meat controversial bills, and the lobbyists were against it, and so it was dead on arrival. And I go present it to the committee, and Shelby said, he said, "All right, present your bill," and then he did, and then he said, "Is this your election bill to the Senate?" And I said, "Well, it wouldn't hurt, Mr. Chairman." He said, "All right," and he said, and then they went through it all, and everybody just trashed it, and they said, "All those in favor say aye." Nobody said, "Oh." His favor said no. Even the sergeant at arms, this old guy named Victor Thompson, I believe is his name. He was great. He said no. Everybody in the crowd, and he bangs his gavel, and he goes, "The ayes have it." And he looked at me. He goes, "Tell the dean Shelby said thank you."
Oh, I love it.
I've never forgotten that, and that was. But what it amounted to was it's about relationships. Yeah. And relationships, and you develop those across the aisle and whatever, and you find some common ground. And, all this, all they're doing right now is selling memberships, Jamie, and unfortunately they're doing it on the taxpayer's dime. And, Miss Pelosi, she's playing her game. She's against the wall. She says it's immoral, yet for the part that's existing now, she voted for it. So does she want to tear it down? What's existing? No. They don't like the president, and it's about staying in power. And we do it, and they do it, and we do it, and they do it.
And the people that they are supposed to represent get lost in that.
Yeah, and that's what really hacked me off this week when my buddy DJ Corcoran came to Washington. He and his family and several what they call the angel moms. Now, their boy Pierce, he lost his life because an illegal alien wrecked a car, ran into him on Chapman Highway. But there are people, Jamie, I mean, their daughters were brutally raped. I mean, one lady, a little girl, was raped, murdered, and they burned her before they killed her. I mean, they killed her, actually. And it's just just horrendous, and yet they will not meet with these people. And to me, that just rips at my soul. I mean, I don't know whether I cannot.
Right.
You see that, and you can't turn your back on these people in Nashville. And with this, it's the same thing. Let's sit down and talk to these people and find some common ground. But right now, everybody's just dug their heels in, and they said, "Well, bring something to the floor." Well, the way nobody within the press, they're co-conspirators and all this. Unfortunately, the national media, I like local media more than I like national media. And I've had my problems with local media, obviously. But they, the rules
my
are...
own paper, folks. Let me say that. She cannot, I mean, she stops every bill. You cannot have anything on the floor that she personally doesn't say it comes to the floor. To me, that's not democracy. That's you've got a fiefdom, and both sides are guilty of it. I turned to one of the old Republicans. We had this voice vote on the floor on Friday, and the acting speaker, Miss Pelosi, got on the bus and was headed overseas, and then the president stopped him. I told him, well, if the president was really mad at her, he should have let her get overseas and then stopped her flight. Then she couldn't have come back. Then she had to fly from Afghanistan commercial. So, right. But anyway, it's just interesting watching this go down and seeing history, but it's not really history because it won't be ever reported. But that's neither here nor there. But that's my gripe for the week, I guess. Well, we're glad to hear it, folks. We've got to take a break. This is News Talk 98.7. I'm Jamie Satterfield, filling in for George Corder. We'll be back with Congressman Tim Burchett. Now, I like this, but I don't know that I've heard it. You recognize this tune?
No, I'm trying to think who it is. I recognize it. Who is it?
Who is it?
It's
Tell
the band. I just picked
the band. Okay,
I just heard.
There we go.
I just heard good drums and was like,
I like it. All right. Well, folks, this is News Talk 98.7. This is Jamie Satterfield with the Knoxville News Sentinel. I'm filling in for George Corder. For the next 3 weeks, I'll be on the mic for George. And my guest today is Congressman Tim Burchett. In the first hour and a little bit of the second, we've been talking about our coal ash workers. And, Tim, if you don't mind, I've got a fellow that's been hanging on for about 18 minutes that's telling me, Bill, so I'm going to see if I can get him on there. Let's see. Bill, are you still with us? I'm so sorry. Are you there? Oh, we must have lost him. Well, let's try Doug. All right. Doug, are you still with us?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, okay. Well, good. I'm sorry you've had to wait. Tell me a little bit. It says here that you were a spill worker.
Yeah, I got down there just right after it happened, driving the truck. And me personally, I thought I was working for TVA, since I was a Gumby employee, getting a check from Gumby, which is a division of TVA. But I've now got stage 4 brain cancer, lung cancer, and got a spot on my adrenal gland. So I don't have 10 years to wait. I maybe got 2 for any resolution on this thing.
Yeah,
I've done sold off half my cattle herd for about a third of what it was worth because I ain't able to get out and do nothing with them.
Yeah. And now, were you a healthy man, Doug, when you went out there to work?
Yes, ma'am. I've never really been sick a day in my life other than just a common cold or something.
Yeah.
And I've worked for TVA contractors after leaving the spill, which stayed at Kingston for another 2 years, working on the ash, driving a water truck.
Watering down the ash, which then causes it to leach into the ground and into our water. That's TVA's dust control plan.
They say it's not dangerous if it's wet. With dust off of it's what's so bad.
Yeah.
Because that's what you're breathing. You get this more concentration if it's dusty.
Well, Doug, the truth is the stuff is dangerous, wet or dry. Wet or dry. It just is. But listen, I appreciate that you called in. You're the reason that I keep going. And every day I ask God to use me to help you folks. And so thank you for telling your story. I am so sorry for what you're suffering.
Let me thank Tim Burchett for all he's done for Tennessee
Absolutely.
and what he's going to do for this nation. If they could some way get rid of Nancy Pelosi, they might get something done in this country. And tell him not to forget the national media, especially live TV.
Yes,
so
sir.
he can get it said before they can cut it off.
Yeah,
Thank
he's
you,
listening.
Doug. Sometimes I wonder, though, the next one in line might be worse. I think sometimes there's a saying, I can't remember exactly what it is, but basically it says the one we know might be better than the one we don't know. So if till things change, I'm not really sure where we're at. But thank you, brother, and God bless you. You'll be in my prayers.
I thank you.
Thanks, Doug.
Appreciate you, Tim.
Okay, I think I cut that off. Folks, I honestly, when I first invited Tim to come on, I was remembering the first time that I ever heard his name. I'm an old cops girl, cops reporter, and that's who I hung with mostly, and criminals and cops and the court system. And so I just didn't rub elbows with politicians, frankly. And the first story I ever heard about Tim Burchett was, I believe he caught some boys breaking into storage facility or something. He'd laid in wait. I think he set a trap for him. I'll let him tell that story. But what tickled me was that he gave them cookies while they were waiting for the cops to come arrest them. And I thought, who is this fella? I want to meet him.
I collect old motorcycles, and I don't have that many. When I married my wife, I think I had over 100 motorcycles.
Oh,
It wasn't like Jay Leno. Most of mine are boat anchors, Jamie. But anyway, and I've sold. I don't. As I said, I'm married now, and I don't. There's no need for that kind of stuff. So I invested that money elsewhere, as they say. But anyway, and I don't keep it, and I rent the warehouse out. But it had gotten broken into, I think, 5 times. I mean, it was crazy. It was just so frustrating to me. I'd go wait out all night out there and right beside the train tracks and just see if something would happen, and nothing happened. Well, it actually, an integral part of it happened because of this radio station. Dave Folk was on the air and said, hey, if you got kids at whatever high school it was, I won't say, but the water main just broke, and you better go get them. And I thought, I had this sinking suspicion that these were high school kids, at least some of them. And so it was pouring rain. It was really a rainy season like we've been having right now, but it was a hard rain coming down. And so I went and, I ran over there, and then, of course, I caught them, and I guess the rest is history. And, I made Glock a household name. I do remember this. My mom and daddy.
Gun and some plate, and a plate of cookies.
And I had cookies, and I always carried these chocolate chip cookies in my pocket because when I was staking it out or whatever, it's always something to eat. And then they had the kids and I said, here, y'all want some chocolate chip cookies? And I remember as there was like 3 squad cars because they had a bunch of folks that we caught, and then one kid hollered out, hey, Tim, thanks for the cookies. And I remember Tom Humphreys, old Knoxville reporter. That was his headlines. Tim, thanks for the cookies. And man, if I'd have been running for president that year, I think I could have won because it was like, it was early on. Al Gore had just invented the internet, so it was early on.
That's way long ago.
Yeah,
thank God for that, right?
Yeah, and I remember I got as far away as Texas. People were sending me emails and thank yous, and oddly enough, in Knoxville, I got a lot of calls from people in the inner city.
Really?
Yeah, and just thank you, because everybody's a victim of crime. Mm-hmm. And I remember that year I got Christmas cards from a lot of people, and I remembered there were only two that I could remember that said Merry Christmas, was from Gadsden Glock and the Outlaws.
Well, and I want to tell this story. One of the reasons that I respect and admire Tim Burchett is just how he's been with me. And we had some trouble on Market Square. You remember that, Tim, where Scott West was involved in some drug business and had funded. You may not remember this, but many of the buildings in Market Square were built with drug money, and the feds had come in and they'd raided and they had arrested this businessman who was very popular, remains a very popular businessman. And I was getting dogged, honey. I mean, people were up in arms because I was calling him what he was, a pot dealer, and treating him like I treated every other criminal that I wrote about. And people were just dogging me, and the city was all mad because I was raising an issue about why are you giving them these buildings back? If they were crack dealers, they wouldn't get their crack house back. Anyway, I was on the radio.
They soon shifted that hatred towards me.
Yeah, they did. But I will say, and honestly, I had never met Tim Burchett personally, and he came on the radio that day and just defended the heck out of me. And I thought, I like this guy. I love the cookies. No, I really like this guy. So anyway, we have been friends ever since. And I can't tell you how many times I've caught Tim unaware doing kind things. And to me, that's the judge of a man's character, what he does when people ain't looking. I'll never forget watching you, Tim, with that little old man that you probably don't even remember. He was toddling to his car with his worker, and Tim was the only one that stopped and helped that man in his car. And what I loved is he put his hand over his head so he wouldn't bump his head as he was getting in the car. And I just thought, yeah, I'll vote for him every day.
I did that from experience. My daddy was one of those hard-headed little old men, greatest generation. And I can remember I was had him and Mama at the Capitol one time, and Daddy had some mini strokes, and he was still with it. He was still as sharp as any 50-year-old, and he was in his 80s, of course, and he fought in the Second World War. And Mama was the perfect mama and a perfect wife. She looked after Daddy to the end. I mean, to the end. She started dying the day my daddy took his last breath. I mean, you could just see it because she held up for him, and I mean, it was just unbelievable. I remember a little girl came up to Mama at the funeral. I remember where I was standing, and I remember who it was. And she said, I think Lindsay Hamill, and she said, Miss Burchett, you are the role model for what a wife and a mom is supposed to be. And I always remember that. But I can always, I would walk with Mom and Daddy, and I'd hold Daddy's hand, and he'd go, I got it, buddy, I got it. And which would mean turn loose. And I'd say, I know, Daddy, I know. And I'd hold on to his hand a little more. And it was funny. One time I think it was a swearing in of somebody. No, it wasn't Bill Haslam. I think it was Don Sundquist and we were walking up the steps of the Capitol, and there's this huge line, and it was cold, and I was thinking, oh, no, Mom and Daddy are going to be cold. And I looked up, and one of the governor's detail saw me in the glass, and he tapped on the glass and said, come up here. He said, this your folks? And I said, yeah. I said, I thought so. He said, come on in here, Miss Burchett. Y'all come on through here. And, of course, Mom and Daddy didn't know that's what they're supposed, what you're supposed to do, or Daddy would have stood out in the cold. Yeah. That's just the kind of guy he was. But anyway, sorry, went to rambling there. Too much caffeine.
No. Anyway, I am I can't say it enough. I'm a fan of Tim. But now I will say, as a journalist, and he knows this well, and this is why we are friends, if they ever come with handcuffs, Tim, you know who's going to be writing it, right?
I know it.
He knows it. Oh, but I have a good feeling that probably will not ever have to be a situation we'll face. But anyway, folks, this is News Talk 98.7. I'm here with Congressman Tim Burchett. And when we come back, we've got one caller here that I'm going to take, and we're going to talk a little bit more about what Tim's been doing in Washington. Thank you so much for listening so far. Numbers are 656-TALK, 1-800-951-TALK, and we'll be back after this break. Tim, I got this on vinyl. I've got me the vinyl.
I can hear it scratching right now. Hey, I understand some folks are wanting to get a hold of me. If you want to call me, I kept the same number as Congressman Duncan did. But the Knoxville number, 865-523-3772. And, of course, the Washington, D.C. number is 202-225-5435. Local is 523-3772. So if y'all need to get in touch with my office, if I need some help with something, state, federal, local, we'll try to help you.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us, folks. This is News Talk 98.7. I'm Jamie Satterfield. I'm filling in for George Corder today on State Your Case. And first hour, we talked to and about some coal ash workers. And the wrong that's been happening to them, continues to happen to them. And then our second hour has been with Congressman Tim Burchett. And so, Tim, are you living the high life in D.C.?
Not hardly. I sleep on my couch. You're paid a crazy amount of money to be a congressman, obviously, but the cost of living up there is incredible. Like a 600 square foot apartment is not furnished, and you still pay utilities and insurance and all the others. Some of them have a HOA fee, is around $2,000 a month.
That's crazy.
And you sign a 1 year lease or a 2 year lease or whatever, and I mean, just a little bitty small place up there just recently sold. I know where the members bought it for $1.3 million. And he was asking me what people thought. And I said, well, in about 5 years, people are going to say, man, can you believe he only paid $1.3 million?
Exactly.
I told him I couldn't afford the 0.3 right now.
You know, when I was up there recently, my Uber driver was telling me, he said, well, you know, working people can't afford to live in D.C. And they can. And people can't afford to park cars. That's why Uber's so big up there.
It's huge, Jamie. I mean, Uber is just, and it fascinates me watching all that. But it's, and the little scooters they rent are everywhere. We went up there for our swearing in. I think somebody called it an inauguration, but it was our swearing in. And one of my colleagues did. But, and Isabel rented these crazy scooters. Some of the Cubs that worked on my campaign came up there, and they all took care of my Isabel, and we rode those crazy scooters around one night, and it was almost surreal, really, because the Washington Monument was in the background. You know, it's funny. You walk out of the office, and you sit there thinking, you know, what you're, mad about something or something. You look up and you see that dome of the Capitol, and I just think, man, how blessed I am in this country, and that I'm a freaking congressman. To me, that's just, it's surreal, really. I really, my wife and daughter, they keep me grounded, but they also keep me confident. So they, on both sides of that, they, I guess it's that line you kind of walk, but it's, we have my family and I have a great relationship and a great time with all this, so it's been wonderful.
And you are not a whiner, but being a leader, an elected leader, is hard. It's hard on you. It's especially hard on your family. It's terribly hard
on the family. I mean, somebody hiding behind some screen takes a shot at you, and I've never
seen such a dirty campaign, Tim.
Against me?
One. Yeah, Lord. And the attacks on your family, and because your wife.
A lot at stake. Sure, I'm used to it, but it's unfair to them. It is. I say, I'm fair game. Say what you want. Lie. The Supreme Court said you can just about say anything about anybody now that's in a public official, and and the bar for that you could fall over it. But it's I'm fair game, but leave my family out of it. And
I just want to say I wished that Kelly was here today. You have a fine family, and I'm really happy for you. Folks, they're telling me we need to wrap up. Is that right, Joe? It's more than I think it is. I am learning this thing, Tim. Let me tell you. It's always a pen and a notebook, and here they got me with a mic and all kinds of stuff.
Well, at least with George Corda, when you come on, if it starts at 1, I get here at 1:30. George is usually still talking.
I know, right? So. That's right. But no, I do want to thank you for coming in. Taking time to meet with my workers. They just think you're a rock star.
Well, I don't know about that, but I'll tell you this. I remembered under your old bosses, and I have my faults with them too, but their motto was, I'll paraphrase it, old Scripps motto, it's shine the light and people find their way. Unfortunately, now too many people are just shining a laser beam, expecting you to walk that beam, and that's just not the way it is. And I appreciate your brand of reporting, and I appreciate the fact that you're fearless, and we need more of that in this country.
Thank you. It's a privilege to be able to do what I do, and I do. I thank you for being here, and I know that our country is in good hands with you up in D.C. Thanks, folks, for tuning in. I'll be back next week filling in for George, and who knows what we'll talk about, whatever God puts on my heart and guest he puts in the studio. So thank you so much. This is George Corda, State Your Case. I'm Jamie Satterfield, News Talk 98.7. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday.